young man of good appearance and family, to the being who was a very incarnation of evil. For once, Kauf did not rehearse the scene. Shirley was obviously weakened from his experience, and the director wished to spare him. All the details were shouted out through the megaphone, however, and I grasped that the action of this part of the dance was familiar to everyone. It was the big scene of the story toward which all other events had built. And then came the familiar order, "Camera!" At the start of this episode, the orchestra was playing and the dancers were in motion. Suddenly, Gordon, as the hero, strode up to Shirley and unmasked him with a few bitter words which later would be flashed upon the screen in a spoken title. Instantly a crowd gathered about, but in such a way as not to obstruct the camera view. Cornered, seeing that flight was impossible unless he became the Black Terror and possessed the strength and fearlessness of that strange other self, Shirley drew a little vial from his breast pocket and drank the contents. Evidently he knew his Mansfield well. Slowly he began to act out the change in his appearance which corresponded with the assumption of control by the evil within. His body writhed, went through contortions which were horrible yet fascinating. It was almost as though a new fearful being was created within sight of the onlookers. Not only was the face altered, but the man's stature seemed to shrink, to lose actual inches. I thought it a wonderful exhibition. The very next instant there came a groan from Shirley, something which at once indicated pain and realization and fear. He lost all control of himself, and in a moment pitched forward upon the floor, spluttering and clutching at the empty air. Another cry broke from between his lips, a ghastly, contracted shriek, as treble as though from the throat of a woman. This was no part of the story, no skilful bit of acting. It was real. Even before I had grasped the full significance of the happening, Kennedy had dashed forward. The cameras still were grinding, and they caught him as he kneeled at the side of the stricken man. Hardly a second afterward, Mackay and I followed, and were at Kennedy's side. Kauf and the others, their faces weirdly ashen, clustered about in fright. A third time, the invisible hand had struck at a member of the company. The Black Terror, with all the horror written into that story, contained nothing as fearful as the menace to the people engaged in its production. Shirley's skin was cold and clammy, his face almost rigid. While conscious, he was helpless. Kennedy found the little vial and examined it. "Atropine!" he ejaculated. "Walter!" He turned to me. "Get some physostigmine, quick! Have Mackay drive you. It's life or death. Here, I'll write it down. Physostigmine." As I raced madly out and down the stairs, Mackay at my heels, I heard a woman scream, "Marilyn!" Did she think him dead? Once in the car, headed for the nearest drugstore, grasping wildly at the side or at the back of the seat every few moments as the district attorney skidded round curves and literally hurdled obstacles, I remembered a forgotten fact. Atropine. That was belladonna. Simply another name for the drug. Shirley had procured the stuff for use in his eyes. Nevertheless, he had been aware, undoubtedly, of its deadly nature. Passing by Kennedy and the rest of us, he had overheard Kennedy state that the murderer would be identified as soon as all could be assembled in the projection room. The heavy man had not cared to face justice in so prosaic a manner. With the same sense of the melodramatic which had led him to slay Stella Lamar in the taking of a scene, Werner in the photographing of another, he had preferred suicide, and had selected the most spectacular moment possible for his last upon earth. Yes, Shirley was guilty. Rather than wait the slow processes of legal justice, he had attempted suicide. Now we raced to save his life, to preserve it for a more fitting end in the electric chair. End of chapter 30.